All right, great. So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to IDHE's Big Reveal. We are here today to talk about our Campus Boundaries project. I am Nancy Thomas. I'm the director of IDHE, which is located at the Tisch College of Civic Life at Tufts University. We are a research center that studies basically all things political on college campuses. We look at, as everybody probably on this call knows, we look at student voting. We are the home of NSOLVE, the National Study of Learning, Voting, and Engagement. But we also look at some other things, such as higher education's role in democracy, classroom teaching, free speech, academic freedom, and polarization on campuses. And today we are going to talk about one of our favorite topics, which is barriers to student voting. I am happy to say I am joined today by my colleague at IDHE, Yui Trin. She is the one you should chat questions to if you are not comfortable asking them out loud. But I'm also really lucky to have a ringer. And a ringer is somebody who knows a lot about this subject, and that is Stephen Adelson. So I'm going to turn it over to Stephen to introduce himself, and then we'll come back to me and we'll run through this tool.
Thanks, Nancy. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephen Adelson. I use they and he pronouns. I'm the National Manager of Redistricting Fellows at Campus Vote Project, which is a project of the Fair Elections Center. I joined the team a little over a month ago to bring on board redistricting fellows in 9 different states across the country. The redistricting fellows are working hard as we speak to empower college students on their campuses and throughout their states to have a voice in the redistricting process. And so the tool that we're going to explore today is something that our team is going to be using in the weeks and months ahead as we conduct our work. And with that, I'm excited to explore it with you all today, and I'll hand it back over to Nancy to get us started.
Sounds great. And I have to apologize for the pinging in the background. I don't know how to not be mute and mute the pinging. So as people join, you will know. I also am going to put these on. My daughter bought them for me. She said, "Mom, you look demented when you wear them." But I cannot see the screen without them. They are my cheaters. So I'm going to ask Stephen to just sort of move around this tool, and I will try to give him some direction. So what you're seeing is the opening of the tool. It is a map of the United States. We have mapped districts for all of the states in the country. It is a really cool tool that moves around. If you go to the Getting Started button and hit that, you will see that we've got just a welcome. If you go to About This Project, I just want to tell you that this is a project that we didn't really think much about until one day Prabhat Gautam in my office came to me and said, "You know, I have looked at the data and it looks like communities of interest that are largely college students are twice as likely to be gerrymandered." And what he had been doing at the time was taking the boundaries of campuses and drawing a line, and then drawing a line where the districts were either cut through or right on the edge, and it looked suspicious. And I said, "Oh, that's interesting. Why don't you pursue that?" Could you go to acknowledgements for me, Stephen? Thanks. So Prabhat is in the middle here under my name. His name should be above my name, and I'm going to get that changed. But I also want to give a big shout out to Ryan Gomez. He is a consultant and a GIS wizard and expert. He has done the analysis for us and created this brilliant map. Ryan is available. I'm going to give you a little commercial for him. He's really worth the time and money. And so if you need anything along these lines, contact Ryan. He's just a brilliant map maker, which I think is an understatement, but that's what he is. All right, so let's go back to the top right corner, how to use. All right, so here is literally a step-by-step guide. We tried to make this easy to use. And so just a couple of things to point out. We are not doing this based on campus boundaries anymore. We're not looking at the outline of the campuses. And there were a couple of reasons for that. One is that students make up communities of interest. And for most of you, that's probably not a term I would need to explain, but it is for the purposes of mapping what mappers look for and also what the people who draw the district lines look for. And so what we wanted to do was find the communities of interest that serve students and particularly minority students. And so on the map, the large map, you will see anything in yellow is a community of interest that is a student community. In the bottom left of the large map is a key that says district lines. As I'm sure most of you know, the district lines that matter are, of course, congressional district lines, but then there are also the state district lines. And those are very important because it's the states that map out these districts. So as you know, if a state is dominated by one political party over another, there is often gerrymandering to maintain power by that particular party. And so it's really important to take a look at these state upper and lower lines as well. All right, I think we can go back to the map itself. You can close that out. Thank you. Just a couple of other features. And Stephen is going to demonstrate this with more dexterity than I would, but in the middle is something called map locations. What you would want to do is enter you can enter a location, you can enter a university if you want to. The other thing to note is that the blue dots on the map itself are campuses. All right, so interestingly, not all blue dots are in communities of interest, and that is partly because students are spread out. It's partly because there wasn't a high enough concentration of students in that community. Could you hit filters for me? Okay. So we've got 3 filters that you can use. The big one that I think will interest you the most are demographic filters. There you can move your cursor on the red line to make the concentration of the population that you're interested in tighter. So we have done this with communities of interest with more than 20% college students. And yet if you're interested in something that's say 50%, you just move that line over. One of the most important things, as I'm sure everybody here knows, is that it's not just about gerrymandering college students, but it's also about minority populations and minority college students. And for that reason, we give you all sorts of data there. I'm not going to go through what's on the right-hand side because I think it's going to come up as Stephen goes through his review. But what we basically got on the right is data for each of the communities of interest that come up. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen. We are going to do questions. We're going to open it up for questions, but we're going to go through a couple of examples first.
Thanks, Nancy. So like I mentioned earlier, we're doing a lot of work with different redistricting fellows across the 9 states that we're engaged in. One of the states that we're working in is Texas. So I'm going to use Texas State University in San Marcos as my first example. So if you type in the field Texas State University, you'll see the university pop up. And so you can click on that and it'll bring you to where Texas State University is located on the map. And if you hover over the blue dot, you'll see that that's where Texas State University is. So that's very convenient. What I'm particularly interested in is how the different district lines relate to where these yellow fields are and the concentrations of students that live within these yellow fields. So what I like to do is click on the different district lines to see where they cross with the campus. So if I zoom in just a little bit, you'll see that the campus is here. And so for the congressional line, you can see that the congressional line draws directly through this Texas State University in San Marcos and in significant parts of the San Marcos community. If you zoom out a little bit, you can actually click in the different districts to see what district numbers they are. So this is Congressional District 21. And then over here, we have Congressional District 35, splitting the campus in half. You can do the same for the state upper, so the Senate in many cases, and you'll see that once again, the San Marcos community is split directly in half with State Senate District 25 and State Senate District 21. And then you can do the same for the lower, which is the House in many cases, and you can see in this case, the university and some of the surrounding community is kept within one particular district, so State House 45. So why is this really useful for us in the work that we're doing? Not only is this tool helping us to understand where the lines are drawn, but it's also helping us to understand where large concentrations of students are living throughout the country. And so when I click on, let's say, this yellow field to the north and to the east of Texas State University, you'll see there, we can see on the right-hand side that population number. I can't see it right now. So what you would see though, when you do click on this field on the right-hand side, is the total population of people who live in this particular area, as well as the college enrollment, the number of students who live in this particular area. I'm actually going to refresh for a second. I think I might have done something with the filters right before we started. So I'm just going to refresh and see if that changes anything, which it definitely did. So I'm going to go back to Texas State University. And so we're going to click on this field again. And now you can see on the right-hand side that this particular community in San Marcos has 31,971 people living in this particular area. And of that, 15,465 are students. So when you do the math, almost half of the people who live in this particular area, in this particular community, are students. And so that's really significant for us when we're thinking about communities of interest that we want to advocate for. And so if we do the same for the community to the south and to the west of Texas State University, you can see that this particular area and this particular community has about a little over 20% students. So what our work at Campus Vote Project and the Redistricting Fellowship is doing is advocating for communities of interests to be brought together or kept together. And so we're using this information in the work that we're doing. So for example, this past weekend, the Texas State House held a redistricting committee meeting where the public had an opportunity to testify. And we had one of our redistricting fellows who was able to attend the public hearing and provide testimony. This redistricting fellow is a student at Texas State University, and they waited a little over 5 hours to testify. And once they had the opportunity to do so, they spoke about their community and where the lines are currently drawn. And based on how their community comes together, they want to see their Texas State University and the areas where large percentages of students are living nearby come together and be within a singular district at all levels of government. So we're really proud of the student who testified. And because this tool was launched just a couple of days before their testimony, we were able to use the information from this particular tool when they were finalizing their testimony prior to sharing it with the redistricting committee. So I'm going to give just one more example, another timely example, because we actually have a redistricting fellow in Florida who is going to be testifying in about 30 minutes. And so I think it would be a good opportunity for me to use their campus as an example. So let's head on over to the University of Florida. In Gainesville, and with a population of, about 53,000 students. And so you'll see here, we've got University of Florida. And as we look at the different district lines, we see that congressional lines, we're good there. State upper, we're good there. But then when we look at the state house, we see that the state house district lines go straight through the Gainesville community, including the University of Florida. And so when I click on the yellow field, again, it shows me the data on the right that's really helpful. So we see in this particular community that there's over 60,000 people living there, with just under half of the population being students. And the fact that this community is split in half, our redistricting fellows did some research and found that it really would make more sense for their campus community and the communities where students are living nearby to be brought together within a singular state house district. So in about 30 minutes, that is what our redistricting fellow in Florida will be doing. They're driving up from the University of Florida to Tallahassee as we speak, so that's quite a drive. But really proud of the work that they're doing. And once again, this tool has been incredible to the work that we've been doing to this point just in the past few days since its release. I'm really excited about what we'll be able to do with it going forward. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Nancy for a couple of more examples.
All right, thank you so much, Stephen. This is great. I want to reiterate, I'm grateful to you for your dexterity. One of the things I just want to double emphasize is the far column to the right. Look, if you look at Gainesville, Florida, you'll see that this is also a community that is heavily populated by minority students. That is a good size number. And I think it's worth noting once again that those are the targeted, those are communities of interest that are targeted. College student communities are targeted, minority college student communities are even more targeted. If you could go down to Jackson State down in Mississippi, that would be great. And then if you zoom in a little bit, there you go. So take a look at the, just point at the lines, the various lines, and let's get them drawn. Okay, there's one. So the congressional line, they're pretty much in one district. And I want to come back to that because it's not always good news. The lower house and then the upper house. Okay, so you can see once again, just like Stephen's example, it has been divided up, and it has been divided up in ways that dilutes the vote power of these students. So, over on the right, I think it's not populating this area. I don't know that you have to refresh. I think if you hit clear all filters,
it's showing up on the right.
There it is at the top. Good, thank you. So at any rate, I don't know that this needs any more explanation than that. If you go over to maybe to Fayetteville State, which is an HBCU, you can see another example of this. So once again, you can see, if you just highlight the lines, check out that, I call it a shark's fin. It's just why they didn't go straight across. Well, I think we can guess, but you don't know. One of the things that we are a little hesitant to do is say that the lines were drawn for evil intent on this, and there are reasons why. Sometimes lines follow natural boundaries, a river or something like that. Sometimes efforts to corral a campus or an interest of a student interest community is done to pack them into one area and dilute them by giving them fewer representatives. So one of the institutions that I was curious about was the University of New Hampshire. You don't need to go there, but the UNH is completely bounded. It's all within one district. The average size of a district in New Hampshire is about 3,500, and UNH is in a district of 15,000. And my first reaction was, oh my gosh, they've packed them all in so they can dilute them. But then when we dug a little bit deeper, we realized that that district had multiple representatives. So even if it's packed or split up, you have to do a deeper dive. You have to look at them. One other point about where these lines are drawn, sometimes they predate. The lines are there because something predated the districting, and Tufts University is a perfect example of that. Tufts University is on a hill, the bucolic ivory tower on a hill. It is, I will say, very, very pretty. And right down the quad at the top of the hill, I can literally straddle it, and on my right will be Medford and my left will be Somerville. We have dorms on both sides. If the students register to vote in Somerville and then move to a Medford dorm the next year, they have to re-register to vote in Medford. It is a total pain. But the fact is that Medford and Somerville were there before the university. And so claiming some kind of evil intent may not be accurate. Claiming great inconvenience that dilutes the student vote power is not. That is also accurate, but that doesn't mean the intent was there to do so. Always take a closer look. The idea behind this tool was so that everybody in the country could pull up their area, pull up their campus, and get started. It was not meant to be the final look for anybody. It was also a way so that if people are testifying, they don't have to bring lots and lots of maps and charts. They've got this nifty little tool. So with that, I think what we will do is open it up to questions. You have a choice. You can put your questions in the chat. You can direct them to everybody. You can direct them to Yui, or you can unmute and just ask your question. So we'll give you a minute to think about your questions and then let us know.
Nancy, we have a question in the chat. I just want to raise that for now. It asks, how are we defining minority for this tool? Does it mean non-white?
Yeah, I think so. We use whatever the categories are that are in the census. And so we are using those categories for this. When we do this for our voting study, we use the categories that are provided by the institutions to the National Student Clearinghouse, and we use those categories. So as everybody knows, defining minority is not always the easiest thing. And I don't even like the term minority because in a lot of these districts, for example, at HBCUs, they are not minorities, they are the majority. So it is an old-fashioned term that we inherited when we did this tool, and I look forward to the day when we can sort out all the language challenges. But basically, we are using the data that we are given. Thanks for your question, Dylan. Do the numbers represent the raw population data or registered voters or eligible voters? Oh, that's a great question. Stephen, do you know the answer to that? I'm pretty sure it's the voters.
Yeah, so my understanding is that the data that's being used here is based on registered number of voters.
Yeah. Yeah. Just remember, and this is a great thing to be able to tell your students who are reluctant to vote, you know, if they don't vote, if they don't register to vote, they're invisible. Not only do they let others pick their candidates and who represents them, but they are not in these files Now the census data has everybody, and that's the piece I'm just not sure about, is what we're looking at. I'm wondering if Ryan wants to unmute and answer that question, because I don't want to do it wrong.
Sorry, Ryan, do you want to speak, or I can see? He did message me. He said it's a raw number, not voters.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. Hi, welcome from New Orleans. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So the first question was, is this registered voters, eligible voters? The number is the raw total population, and that's everyone everywhere. And as far as minority goes, it is non-Hispanic whites and all non-white categories provided to us by the census.
Fantastic.
Mhm.
It pays to have the expert on the tool on here. So thanks, Ryan. That's great. I'm glad everybody got to hear your voice too.
Thank you so much.
Other questions? These are all good questions. We're learning. We're making the path by walking, I will tell you. So we're learning too. I'm really excited about it. All right, well, feel free to add more. Anything else, Yui?
No, I don't have any questions on my end.
Okay,
Nancy,
yeah.
hi, this is Glenn Sarsoletti from the University of Rochester.
Hi, Glenn.
I have a question, and I realize I may be anticipating some like future research that you're planning to do with this tool, but I'm wondering how the sort of the partisan divide plays out with this sort of, and you know far more about this, and Stephen as well probably know far more about this than I do, but I think on many college campuses, they tend to be more left-leaning than right-leaning, but obviously not the case on all campuses. And you know, just are campuses more likely to be split in redistricting in states controlled where Republicans control the redistricting process than in states where, you know, blue states like New York, where we live, where the Democrats control that process?
Yeah. Glenn, it's such a good question, and it is exactly where I was going to go next with things and tell you what we are working on. We are working on a data brief, and I want to get you the absolute airtight numbers before I answer all these questions, because it's not just, you know, is our red states gerrymandering, but what's their system for creating the districts? Is it a single party districting state? Is it a state that is the districts are drawn by some independent advisory commission or independent commission or an advisory group? I think there's only one state left now that is actually subject to some kind of court oversight, but I'm sure that's not comprehensive and across the entire state. So we are putting together all of those numbers and going to be releasing them in a data brief. Right this minute, it does appear that the targets are in red states trying to dilute the college student vote, and particularly the minority student vote. But I can't give you a ratio right off the top of my head. I don't know if it's twice as likely or 1.5 times as likely. We will be coming out with all of that. I have to say, it's so ironic to me when people gerrymander college campuses, assuming that all of the voters are super liberal. I think young people in general are leaning liberal right now, but that's not their fault. It's that the political parties need to adjust their platforms for this very, very powerful voting bloc. And so I'm excited to see some real changes in this districting cycle. But thanks for your question, Glenn. I will keep you posted. It'll be soon. I'm aiming for Monday. Anything else, folks? Stephen, would you like to make any comments about where you're going to go with this tool? And
Sure.
your work in general?
Yeah, so yesterday, I had a chance to introduce the Campus Boundaries Project to all of our redistricting fellows, since we meet every Tuesday. And they're all really excited to take a deeper dive into it. A lot of the work that they're doing as part of the fellowship is centered around examining communities of interest as they relate to campuses throughout their state, engaging directly with students on those campuses to get a better understanding of where students live and engage. So as we're advocating for communities of interest, they reflect the students and what their views on their community are. And so this tool, how we'll be using it, includes just very plainly, this is the best tool I've seen in terms of just seeing district lines at the state and congressional level. So being able to just go to your university and see where those lines are drawn is just incredibly convenient. But the yellow fields where you can see where substantial numbers of students and percentages of students are living can go a really long way in better reflecting how we advocate for our communities of interest going forward. So whether we have a redistricting fellow that's testifying at a public hearing from their state redistricting commission or the state legislature, or if they are submitting public comment in response to maps that are being proposed by their commissions or state legislatures, we're using the information and data that's in here to better inform the work that we're doing. So this has been a blessing in so many ways for the work ahead of us. I'm really excited to see how we can continue to integrate it into what we're doing as part of the redistricting fellowship, as well as all the other findings that come out of the data brief, and incorporating that into our work as well.
Thank you. That's great. Okay, last call questions.
Yes, I have a question that just came in. Stephen, this might be directed towards you. Can you talk more about what research students can do in order to advocate for things like not breaking up campus across house districts, precincts, etc.? How can students then utilize this at a public and state level to change things?
That's a really great question. So I would say a lot of the work that we've been doing with the redistricting fellowship has been trying to make it as easy as possible for students to not only understand the implications of redistricting and the process that's ongoing, but also focusing on the ways in which students can get intimately engaged in the process in their state. Because depending on what state you're in, there are different varying degrees of public input opportunities. So some states offer opportunities to submit maps that you draw yourself, to advocate for your community to be drawn in a particular way based on your views of your community. There are a lot of states that are offering hearing opportunities with their redistricting commission or their state legislature, where you can make your voice heard in those ways. In the 9 states that we are doing work in particular, we are hosting a number of workshops, training sessions, and opportunities for students who want to learn how to draw a map themselves, how to draft testimony or written comment to submit to their commission or state legislature, and also to be able to better explain the redistricting process in their state. So my recommendation would be to tap into a lot of the resources that are already being developed nationally. At Campus Vote Project, we're in the process of developing some more standard resources about what does it mean to draw fair districts, what is the history behind gerrymandering of campus communities, and the implications of that to dilute the student voting power. But we're also working on some state-specific resources too, so that students can better understand what are the opportunities available to them to engage in the process. So I would definitely keep an eye out for that on the Campus Vote Project website, as well as our newsletters, since those resources and opportunities will be coming up in the next several weeks.
And Stephen, can you identify those 9 states and how were those chosen?
Sure. So the 9 states that we're working with in are Florida, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Texas, Virginia, and Wisconsin. I think I got them. those are the 9 states that Campus Vote Project are primarily engaged in. And so when the redistricting fellowship was formed, we continued to do the work in the 9 states that Campus Vote Project is engaged in.
Thank you.
And when we come out with our brief next week, we will be including we will have a model that we're putting together to identify the most at-risk communities of interest. And that list will be in the data brief. And I can assure you it's beyond these 9 states that CVP is working in. So I'm really hoping that people from all over the country start to look at this tool and look for their campuses in it. The other thing that we're working on are teaching tools, because we would like to see this embedded in classrooms. We won't, of course, write an entire course on it. We will try to put together a couple of course modules that could be picked up and run with in relevant classes. So hopefully that will be of use to you too. And then the last thing I think we will do, but we need to find funding for it actually, is that we will do another map once the new districts are drawn. And hopefully it will have a feature where you can see where the old districts were and the new districts are. So you can track what happened.
Stephen, one last question. Are you doing research in more rural, urban, or suburban communities? And how do you identify these communities?
That's a great question. So a lot of the work of our redistricting fellows starts initially with where they go to school, their college or university. So where those are situated kind of span the spectrum from rural to suburban. From there, our redistricting fellows are doing a lot of work and engaging in other colleges and universities throughout the state where they're situated. And that means that they are going to be engaging with communities that are very different than their own. And so that entails a lot of research and understanding before taking any sort of steps to more deeply engage in any sort of advocacy as it relates to those communities. Our priority is to try and get our redistricting fellows to engage with students at different institution types and different communities, so that our redistricting fellows are advocating for college student needs, we're also trying to get other students to advocate for their needs as well, so that redistricting commissions and state legislative bodies have a more complete understanding of what college student needs are as it relates to the process.
That's great. Super helpful. Yui, anything else?
Nope, no more questions on my end.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Let us know if we can help or answer any questions. Everything we do, at least so far, I'm trying like heck to keep it this way, is open source and free and available. So feel free to use this tool to your heart's content. And I hope that it makes a difference. So thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. Spread the word. And thank you, Stephen. Thank you for your help. Yui, thank you so much. Ryan, as always, thank you. Have a good day, everybody.